Hello, I just thought I'd give an update on the tank. Now it's 1st of January, it's been running a few months. You may have seen the set of videos I did about the red cotton candy algae, which were totally beaten by the Mexican turbo snails, thank goodness. Yeah, all the fish are doing great, growing fast. That fox face is such a fat little guy, and actually the powder blue is as well. Both really happy here. The corals are going okay. There's a Ceratopora there that's growing like a rocket. I've got a few other frags. What I do have, of course, is the endless fan worms. I quite like a few fan worms, very nice, but this is getting ridiculous. And after as much research as I can do, it looks like the only answer is going to be a copper band butterfly. I don't have concerns about quarantining it because I can feed it fan worms or getting it to settle in. My only issue is what will Ian, the powder blue tang, do? But he seems such a placid guy, and I don't really see, with this amount of fan worms, I don't really see that I've got any option. I don't really want to add more fish. I was thinking maybe a couple of tiny fish sometime in the summer, because I don't like tanks, you know, personally don't like tanks with too many fish in, but the copper band seems to be the only solution for this. As you can see, I mean, when you've got them, the fans growing all over and through the corals, it becomes a problem, so there's not really much choice. I just gotta be careful introducing the copper band, making sure he's really well fed before he goes in, putting him in at lights out time, and just fingers crossed really. He's certainly going to have plenty to eat in here, so I'm just going to set up my quarantine tank and try and get him settled in and fattened up as much as possible. They are quite finicky eaters. My frilly tonga mushroom there is just astonishing. Through the daytime he stretches up like that with a trunk, and at night time or evening he goes down into more of a flat disc, and he's about 4 inches across when he's like that. Really impressive. Some of these other corals look absolutely stunning when they're under the blue lights. Unfortunately I can't photo it with this phone, it just does not show it, which is a real shame. I've also just got a toadstool there at the back, a nice little, let me zoom in a bit if I can, if he'll show up under this light. Not really, but there we go, he's a lovely specimen, just got a light tinge to the ends. And one thing I'm really pleased about is the Goniopora. I used to have one in my marine setup in the 80s. I think he lasted about 4 weeks before he fully dissolved. Well, this one's been in there a few months now. It's growing, new heads, larger and longer trunks to the existing polyps. Great stuff, really pleased with that. Again, it comes into its own under the blue lights. That one's a blueberry Goniopora, if I remember rightly. One of my favourite corals is my bird of paradise Ceratopora, which is really starting to table now. Absolutely stunning. Colour on it in real life, beautiful. I'd really recommend that coral. It's only about 4 or 5 inches from the surface, with 4 Mitras LX7s above it, so we are talking bright, we're talking full flow. It's good, real good. My Favia, my Dragon Soul Favia, took a long time to get going, but it's now flowing down the side of the original cube-shaped frag, and it looks, that one bottom right, looks like that's now splitting to become 2 heads, which is good news. Anyway, I'll show you the sump. This is the first side of the sump with a skimmer in, obviously. Everything seems to be doing its job. I'm managing to keep all the levels in good order. I'm going to have to look to clean this sump out soon, siphon the gunge from the bottom. And through to the other side, the refugium is growing great. There's not so much macroalgae because I had to take 95% of it out while sorting out the red cotton candy algae problem, but that's all done now. I don't know what this macroalgae is, but it's lovely. The rest is a caulerpa, which is growing nicely as well. There's not so many of the fans in the refugium, but they have got between the baffles, I don't know if we can see this down here, between those two baffles, loads of the little blighters. And they've also got into the return section, and some of those, really hard to see, but some of those are stuck to the glass and they look like they're about 4 inches long. I've never been sure how they spread, but I think they lengthen and then break and just sprout a second head, because the speed of spread is just astonishing. I've opened up the Canopy just to show you the LX7s. They're absolutely gorgeous, haven't missed a beat. I run them with clouds, moonlight simulation, it fades to blue in the evenings. Really, really pleased with these. They're a lot of money, but they certainly do the job. Another thing I've been pleased with is that extractor up there. I don't know if you can hear, but it runs at a constant trickle, and then when the humidity gets too high it kicks off into a boost mode. I think it's a Greenwood CV2GIP. CV2GIP. Brilliant fans, and as you can see from the ceiling and the walls, despite the fact this is just above the tank and I have the canopy shut, there is zero mould, no issues. That fan has totally maintained the environment in a good condition. So, showing you through my mini fish room, I've got my various foods and dosing containers down here. I have pretty much stuck with this for dry foods, the Vitalis marine flakes, the Marin S pellets, the crab cuisine and Reef roids. With the flake and pellets I just add a tiniest amount to mixes of frozen. The Reef roids I spot feed to the corals every 2 or 3 days. I did try broadcast feeding for a few days, but then you just get algae really quick. The dosing, I have been dosing alkalinity for quite a while, calcium a few weeks back, and I'm getting closer to having to dose magnesium. Not quite there yet, so I'm currently looking into getting a 3-channel doser, and I'm probably going to go for the GHL 2.1 doser because it will fit in beautifully with the rest of the GHL kit and it'll all talk to each other. Bit pricey, but the quality, and based on my experience with GHL, the quality is excellent. The quality should stand me in good stead. The Gaias have worked beautifully with this advanced controller, which is currently running on the Oceanic Gaia cycle. That's the one I've plumped for. It gradually changes through the day. The first unit I had failed. The supplier, Charterhouse, were really good. However, the manufacturers refused and said, oh, it's water contamination. Well, since the tank had only been set up about 2 days and had been 0 splashing, I knew that wasn't the case. Charterhouse honoured the guarantee even though they didn't have to, and replaced the unit. It's now been there about 8 months and it's working fine. I don't know what the issue was with the original controller, but I wasn't too pleased with the manufacturers. The way it runs though, absolutely fine. It's really quite quiet, very effective, bit fiddly for cleaning, but I strip it and soak it in vinegar. It looks like it's about due with all that algae on it again. Up here I've got a whiteboard with all my important information on. Let's bring that down for a better look. You can see the targets I'm aiming for in the centre. Calcium spot on, alkalinity just a little low, salinity, I've gone for a lower specific gravity than a lot of people. It seems to be absolutely fine for the fish and the corals. It's less stress for the fish and it's cheaper as well, less salt. My pH consistently hovers just below 8. The magnesium target of 1300, maybe 1350 will be fine. Mine has slowly dropped to 1380. For a long time it was off the top of the scales, and as best I could work out it was about 1700. My first salt was the aquatics, and then I changed to Kent Marine, and that's been great. I'm still dosing sugar each day, just one little packet, and that keeps all my levels in check. With the actual dose, I'm on 30ml of alk, 5ml of calcium, and as I said, not started the mag yet, but I suspect that will be in the next month or so. My system for water production has worked out like a dream. Every 2-3 days the RO filter produces RO and stores it in this main tank, and then every now and then I open that blue valve there and drain some of the water down to my salt mix tank here. Press the button on the Proflux touch and it will set the tank to mixing for 6 hours, and I just chuck in a bunch of salt, and when it's done it just kicks in again, and every time there's a top up required the P4 just decides does it need more salt water or just RO. And it's really worked out well. If you want to change the specific gravity, you just change the target in the P4 and then it changes it over a couple of weeks as it gradually tops up with salty or plain water. Proflux itself has not missed a beat. The only issue I have is when you upgrade the software. That's been a bit fiddly for me a couple of times. I'm pretty good at IT, having worked in IT for years, but I'm no good at networking. It just melts my brain, and so I've had a few issues, but once sorted out each time it just runs and runs and runs and works perfectly. It's emailing me a couple of times a day with all the settings, you know, the salinity and temperature and so on, and it will alarm me. And finally I thought I'd show you my guys having a feed. It's a marine mix with a tiny amount of flake and pellet and whatnot. I just switched off the return pump so it's drained down to the weir level, but the guys carry on running, and here we go. So my next fish will be the copper band. I'm going to set up the quarantine now, and that should be it. I'll just carry on adding frags and see where we are in a few months' time. For those of you who've been following along, I really do appreciate it, and I hope that something that I've done will give you an idea or a hint, and if nothing else, that it's just been an enjoyable way to pass the time. I'd like to wish you all a happy new year. Cheers.